Dinghai Fusheng Records. Chapter 51. Goal. Why did you resign from being the great Qian Yu? Chen Xing asked. I didn't want to be it anymore. Xiang Shu coldly replied, What? I can't even make the decision for myself. He asked as he knelt in front of the table and glanced at the tea bowl. Chen Xing had already drunk from it, but he didn't mind. He picked it up and drank from it. Feng Yunjun smiled as he said, Congratulations brother Xiang. Congratulations to you too. Xiang Shu indifferently replied. Chen Xing didn't understand what Feng Yunjun was congratulating Xiang Shu about, and he had an even harder time understanding the reason behind Xiang Shu's congratulations. Only Xiang Shu and Feng Yunjun knew what the other meant. Feng Yunjun was congratulating Xiang Shu for relieving his own burden and finally being able to do his own thing. Xiang Shu was congratulating Feng Yunjun on finally getting married, so that he could stop looking for Chen Xing and acting ambiguously with him all the time. Did you find anything from your investigation? Xiang Shu taking the rare initiative to ask. Just as Feng Yunjun was about to report, Chen Xing asked, What will we do if Shi Mokin agrees to give the golden conferment of Purple Scroll? Feng Yunjun answered, I don't think he will for the time being. Xiang Shu said, I can't manage what he does, he is the new great Qian Yu, not my servant. Chen Xing murmured, Fujian is going to mobilize troops to attack the Yangtze River. Xiang Shu impatiently replied, How is this any of your business? Chen Xing frowned, How, is this not my business? Xiang Shu shouted, It's you who was being incessantly long-winded. You want me to go back to being the great Qian Yu? Now that I've resigned, you're still not satisfied. Feng Yunjun spoke, Why do you two never change, always arguing? Deep inside, Chen Xing actually wanted Xiang Shu to resign from being the great Qian Yu, but later on, when Fujian could go unchecked in the north, the situation would only become more and more dangerous. In order for Xiang Shu to head south with Chen Xing, he resigned from being the great Qian Yu without hesitation. Xiang Shu had originally thought that Chen Xing would be touched, but who knew that Chen Xing's reaction would be completely outside his expectations. He couldn't help the anger brewing in his heart. He sarcastically said, Oh, I forgot, if Gyuwang resigns, your clansmen would be bullied by the Hus again. Now that wouldn't be good, right? This really is too annoying. Chen Xing heard the sarcasm in Xiang Shu's words, yet didn't argue with him. He only said, When a Hu dies, does it not count as another life lost? If they really were to fight, who knows how many people will die? This resentment. Xiang Shu finally couldn't bear it anymore and shouted, Then I'll just head to Chang'an right now and kill Fujian, fine. When Xiang Shu blew up, both Chen Xing and Feng Yunjun were given a scare. Chen Xing could only shut his mouth and stop talking. Tell me, Xiang Shu asked Feng Yunjun, My current identity is that of the Exorcism Department's protector martial god, so what are the results of the investigation? Feng Yunjun suddenly laughed. It didn't sound too bad. If he considered himself an exorcist, then Xiang Shu and Chen Xing were theoretically his superiors. The situation doesn't look too good, Feng Yunjun thought for a moment and signaled Chen Xing to sit down and stop fighting. Chen Xing sat down with a complicated mood and listened to Feng Yunjun's remarks. Just as he started listening, he felt that something wasn't right. Did you have a change of heart? I'm the one in charge of the exorcism department, but you actually started giving out orders. Whatever, I'll bear with it. I'll settle accounts with you after Feng Yunjun leaves. After saying goodbye to the two of you, I headed east, leaving Hang Pass, and bumped into Murong Chong who was on the way to Luoyang. Feng Yunjun said. That night, Feng Yunjun had quietly left. He originally wanted to return to Jiangnan but had bumped into Murong Chong along the way. Fujian had sent out a decree notifying all the people under the heavens, making the Feng family become the scapegoat of this perplexing case. Actually, Murong Chong was already long aware of who the real perpetrator was, and it was impossible for him not to know of his sister's attempt at vengeance. After the funeral, Fu Jian, in an attempt to show him some compassion, transferred him from Pingyang East to Luoyang. He was preparing to bestow him a new fief after a period of time, maybe even crown him as Henan Wang. It was just that because of the turmoil in court, he had to temporarily relinquish the idea. Murongchang led the march, and Feng Qianjun followed behind them the entire way, hearing no little amount of news. He learned ahead of time that the body of Princess King He was stolen overnight. Chen Xing. Xiang Shu's expression suddenly became quite complicated. Feng Qianjun nodded, saying, maybe it was taken to be transformed into that thing. Princess King He was always on Feng Qianjun's mind when she was alive. It was love at first sight. But now, after experiencing so many things, his only wish was for her to be at peace after death. Thus, after Feng Qianjun arrived in Luoyang, he went and found the tomb of the Nanwang Sima in the outskirts of Luoyang. Just as expected, Sima had already been taken out, there was nothing in the coffin. This was consistent with the news that Cheng Xing had received from Sima Wei. Out of the 8 kings, 6 had already been resurrected. As for the remaining 2 kings, nobody knew who they were. Runan Wang Sima Liang, Chu Wang Sima Wei, Zhao Wang Sima Lun, Qi Wang Sima Xi, Chang Sha Wang Sima Yao, Chengdu Wang Sima Ying, Hejian Wang Sima Yang, and Donghai Wang Sima Yu. Xiang Shu felt dizzy upon hearing all of this. He couldn't differentiate who was who in this giant Sima family. Of course, it was no problem for Chen Xing. After all, these were all Han names compared to the 8 kings of the Sima family: Qi Le Chuan's Shi Mokan, Barkle, Che Lufeng, and Karasha were the ones who gave him a headache. Zhao Wang Sima Lun was overtaken by you guys in Chang'an. Feng Qianjun said, Donghai Wang Sima Yu was chopped into a patty by a little brother who I haven't met yet. He was chopped into meat paste. Chen Xing replied seriously. Sima Wei is currently thinking of a way to break free of Shi Has control. Feng Qianjun said thoughtfully, we'll definitely meet sometime. We can say for sure that out of the 6 revived kings, 3 have already been taken out, and the 3 left are still lurking in the dark. Chen Xing frowned, so that's to say Shi Has Drought Fiend's king's defense array is already scattered. Whether or not we can use the 10,000 spirits array or something else to resurrect Chua is hard to say. Xiang Shu's anger had also died down now. He frowned. The other 2 kings must be found as soon as possible and taken care of in advance. However, we don't know where they are buried. He, Feng Qianjun smiled, revealing his neat and white teeth, and said proudly, this is precisely Yu Xiang's area of expertise. Chen Xing asked in shock, they have already been found. Feng Qianjun answered, have you guys ever thought of why Shi Hai was missing just these 2 kings to revive? The reason is incredibly simple, because for him, these 2 folks might be a little too far from him. Wait, Chen Xing vaguely understood what Feng Qianjun was implying. He always felt that Shi Has identity was shrouded in fog. If a corner of it was revealed, then it would be a major clue. It's in the south. Xiang Shu immediately understood. Feng Qianjun meaningfully nodded as he said, it is buried north of Zhongshan in the emperor's mausoleum. In the past, the War of the 8 Princes had brought calamity to the great Jin dynasty. Each and every single one of the 8 princes of the Sima household had been an expert in military arts and a professional at leading an army. Nevertheless, under the crafty Empress Jiananfan's provocation and own interest, they launched a crazy, bloody war against their own brothers in order to fight for the title of emperor. For 10 or so years, it was constantly you killed me, and I also killed him. Jin's millions of troops collapsed completely because of this internal friction, leading to empty northern garrisons, which was used by a Xiongnu, Liu Yan, to command an army to traverse the pass. The final winner, Sima Yu, led the Chang'an court as well as the majority of army and civilians to flee in a panic, but they were intercepted by Liu Yan, they were annihilated. The Jins had been doing large-scale southward migration, and the event was named the Disaster of Yongjia. The Disaster of Yongjia had also marked the beginning of all kinds of Hu uprisings that lasted for nearly 100 years. Still, when the northern tribes were fighting over Guangzhou, Luoyang, and other places, the Sima's family heir, who had reorganized flags and drums on Jiankong, wasn't idle. During the wartime, he displayed his formidable skill of using the vertical and horizontal alliance strategy, which made him not only succeed in inciting disharmony among the tribes, making them fight against one another, but also made him succeed in retrieving the country's imperial jade seal, as well as Prince Hejian and Prince Qi coffins, burying them on the imperial mausoleum of Zhongshan. "That's great," said Chen Xing. "That's really great. Wait, according to what we've seen back on Longzhong Mountain, the revival of an ancient corpse and its transformation to become the Drought Fiend King takes about 7 times 7, 49 days, this process must be very complicated. In fact, there's no need to worry about destroying it. And I think clever," Feng Yunjun said with a smile. "I've already dispatched some spies to keep an eye on the Imperial Mausoleum all day long. In case there's an anomaly, we'll be notified right away." At first, I was still hesitant. If Shihai wants to revive these two princes, he will undoubtedly send his men or even come in person. Isn't it more straightforward if we destroy the princes' corpses in advance? But, hearing Sima Wei's words that you've just repeated, maybe we can still guard the trunk to wait for rabbits. Chen Xing made ahem sound and came up with a daring idea. When that strange masked man resurrected Sima Wei in Longzhong Mountain, it seemed that because the heart lamp had been nearby, it brought about some change. In that case, can we use this variable instead? Make the remaining two princes rebel and take Shihai by surprise? I see that at least, up until now, Feng Yunjun said, Shihai still has yet to arrive in Zhongshan to hastily resurrect the two princes. This, certainly, has a profound meaning. Xiang Shu also made an N sound. Chen Xing felt a little baffled and asked, "What profound meaning?" Xiang Shu folded his arms and pondered in silence. After half a day, he became slightly impatient and said, "I had just praised you for being clever, how come you became stupid again? The reason why Shihai leaves the two princes alone, isn't it obvious?" Feng Yunjun just smiled. Xiang Shu looked at Chen Xing, who was still thinking, and simply explained, "Because south of the Yangtze River isn't Shihai's domain." That brief sentence awakened the person inside the dream in an instant. The cause and effects all become connected in a split second. Longzhong Mountain was no doubt near Xiangyang, and so, the mysterious masked man invaded Longzhong Mountain when the Qin army was besieging the city. That is to say, Shihai's activity scope, up until that point, had always been limited to the northern part of the Yangtze River. He can't get through. What does can't get through imply? Shihai is a person from Fujian's side. Thinking back about the drought fiend chaos in Chang'an, the yin and yang mirror that had returned to Feng Yunyi's hand midway through due to some unexpected turn of events, the answer gradually became clearer. Shihai is currently hiding by Fujian's side, Chen Xing said. Who could it be? This was also the truth that Feng Yunjun had wanted to find out no matter what up until now, Shihai's identity. Namely, the person who had lured his elder brother in and turned him into a devil. This was his most important target for revenge. Chen Xing couldn't help but sigh. Sure enough, a person still needs other people's help. Looking at this conspiracy, he couldn't make heads or tails of it, but unexpectedly, with the deduction of 3 people, it slowly surfaced and became clear. Other than Fujian, who else entered the palace that night? Feng Yunjun said. The Murongs? Tuibayan. It's not Tuibayan, Xiang Shu denied and said, although I don't like him, it can't be him. It was a dark night, and nothing could be seen clearly. I only caught the sight of Fujian and several personal bodyguards. There's always the possibility that it's Fujian himself. Feng Yunjun said, that possibility shouldn't be ruled out. Chen Xing thought for a moment and said, let's not talk about whether Fujian has the motive or not. Do you think an emperor has the time to run west and east just to perform this big play? Oh, that's true, Feng Yunjun expressed his approval. Wang Zi. Xiang Shu came up with another candidate. Fujian always finds him to discuss everything. You saw him? Feng Yunjun asked. Xiang Shu recalled that night, but he couldn't remember whether Wang Zi was behind Fujian then. The three people discussed it over and over, and in the end, Xiang Shu said, so, based on what happens after this, we may be able to clearly determine who that person is. Chen Xing's train of thought was already slightly behind Xiang Shu's, so he had to humbly ask, why? Can you explain it more clearly? Protector, I find you very clever. Xiang Shu, I dare not. Compared to the exorcist who talked in circles during light intellectual conversation and fought with his words with a group of scholars, this protector is only a little bit clever. How could I enter other people's eyes? Chen Xing had already developed an admiration towards Xiang Shu. He also really hadn't understood what had just been said. Unexpectedly, Xiang Shu stabbed him again, and so, he replied in a polite manner, a wise person reflecting 1,000 times will make a loss, an idiot reflecting 1,000 times will make a gain. One shouldn't be ashamed to ask questions once in a while, ma. Xiang Shu. Feng Yunjun saw that the two had begun to disagree and feared that it would turn into a quarrel again. He hurriedly said, asking brother Xiang for advice. To resurrect the remaining two princes, Xiang Shu thus said, one requires a large amount of resentment released by the dead, precisely like the war in Xiangyang. To have dead people, there must be a big war. In case Fujian goes south in the near future to attack Zhongkong, it proves that there's someone by his side that is inciting one. Shi Has identity must be a high-ranking advisor. Feng Yunjun actually hadn't thought about this, so he just nodded. Chen Xing thought that Xiang Shu was indeed really clever. Today, they were reunited with Feng Yunjun, but the happiest thing was not the sudden meeting with an old friend, but rather the change from their passive behavior into the opposite. Shi Has hiding place, once confirmed, would make them have a clear goal. It'd be easier to formulate a plan with that. The scariest thing was to not know the enemy's location and even more, to not know what the enemy was. They had come a long way and had to pay so much for it, but their hardships had finally paid off. This allowed Chen Xing, for the time being, to breathe a sigh of relief. Feng Yunjun still frowned. When Chen Xing was about to ask for more information, Feng Yunjun said, sometimes, it's not necessary to start a war if you want dead people. Jiangnan may look peaceful, but in fact, there is a vicious current surging underneath. You two have returned to Jiangnan now. We can say that the will of heaven works in a mysterious way. Xiang Shu's complexion suddenly changed. Chen Xing, who was about to get up to move, heard what he had said and replied, what? What's the matter? Feng Yunjun hesitated for a moment before he simply said, I also don't know whether this is really as I've speculated, but since we're all involved anyway, might as well say it now. Still remember a soldier's body we found in Longzhong Mountain a year ago? Chen Xing. Chen Xing immediately remembered the time he, Xiang Shu, and Feng Yunjun had gotten to know each other. Xiang Shu had kicked a corpse off the cliff to warn them not to advance any more. Yet, that night, Chen Xing and Feng Yunjun tied the corpse on the horseback, making the horse carry it back to Meicheng. The corpse transformed. Xiang Shu's voice turned serious. Feng Yunjun slowly nodded and said, fortunately, the situation isn't that bad. That dead soldier's corpse, in less than 24 hours after it had been delivered to Meicheng, turned into a living corpse. The knowledgeable Meicheng city's magistrate associated it with the folklore about the Jiangshi's rebellion from the ancient book, and at once, locked the corpse up in a big cage. However, the coroner who had been inspecting the corpse, along with several soldiers, were scratched and got injured on the spot. The living corpse was thus locked and sent to Jiankong. It was secretly presented to the Jin Emperor, Sima Yao, as to not alarm the masses. But very quickly, in less than 10 days after the coroner had returned home, he became infected, fell ill, and bit his wife and child. Following that, many people were turned into living corpses. Chen Xing. Feng Yunjun said, at that time, we still didn't know that the drought fiend army was that formidable. We shouldn't blame ourselves. Xiang Shu turned pale and said, what happened next? Feng Yunjun said, many people in Meicheng got corpse venom. Fortunately, later on, it's not really glorious, but it has been resolved. It was such an understatement that contained so much information. Chen Xing sighed, and Xiang Shu said, it really has been resolved. On the surface, Feng Yunjun said. Last year, in the late autumn, that is, when you were in Chile Chuan, a small-scale plague broke out several times in Jiankong, Moling, Kuiji, Wuzhen, and some other places. They're still spreading to this day. Chen Xing frowned and said nothing. Feng Yunjun described the state of the plague. This disease's origin was inexplicable, and it came without warning. Some said it was brought back by the Jin army who had been sent on a mission to Meicheng, while others thought it was an ordinary plague. Only, the strange thing was, this epidemic didn't kill anyone, and the majority of the infected preserved their lives, but it was followed by signs of prolonged sleepiness. Is there a cure? Chen Xing said. At that time, Feng Yunjun was still investigating the imperial mausoleums in Luoyang, Pantang, Yuzhu, and didn't actually see it with his own eyes. He replied, I heard some have completely recovered. It's said that people can slowly get better by basking in the sunday. Xiang Shu thought for a moment and said, it's probably okay if they can get better then. Feng Yunjun had also specifically paid a visit to those who had completely recovered. He discovered that their actions were still the same as before, and there was also zero indication of them turning into a living corpse, so he decided to just wait and see for the time being. However, as the time went by, this plague was akin to consumption. They wouldn't get better, but they wouldn't drop dead either. Moreover, it was still slowly spreading to many cities south of the Yangtze River. Chen Xing said, then, it's not all right after all. We need to take a look at the patients as soon as possible. Even though he said this, he didn't know what to do after that. Feng Yunjun said, this leads to another problem. There's still more. Chen Xing grudgingly said. Can't you just say everything at once? Feng Yunjun rushed to give a hint. This matter has nothing to do with Shihai, Chu, or exorcists. It's Xiedaran, Xianqis. At this point, the housekeeper next door suddenly shouted, My lord! My lord! Someone help! This very much alarmed them. The three of them were just talking about the plague, and now, they heard a sound of someone falling down next door. Xiang Shu got up and rushed out like a gust of wind. Chen Xing activated the heart lamp and followed suit. Only to see a hobbling Xian who propped himself on the couch and said, It's okay, I just meditated for too long and got leg cramps. Everyone! Xiedaran, Feng Yunjun bowed with hands clasped according to formality, then said, It should be the time for you to pay back the money ba. What you guys were talking about? Xian pulled his lapel, looked left and right down the couch to look for his shoes, then said, I roughly heard most of them. This money affair may I ask young Master Feng to extend the deadline for a few more days? You see, I'm already this old, I can't stand the shock. Chen Xing was confused. He looked at Feng Yunjun before looking back at Xian and said, What? Not the other way around ba? Shixing, you owe Feng Dage money? How much? He's your Shixing. Feng Yunjun was at a loss. Isn't your Shixing Wang Meng? Why did it change to Xian? Xian explained, It's like this. He first told the housekeeper to leave, then said to Feng Yunjun, Since you and my Shidi are familiar with each other, everyone is on the same side. This money of mine, how about we leave it first? Same side my ass. Feng Yunjun said, you made it all sound great before. 70,000 silver taels on your behalf to support the Baifu army. The legal document was issued, all debts will be paid off at the beginning of this spring. I don't need the 10,000 tael interest, but Xiedaran, please pity our pathetic Xifeng Bank. Our Chang'an property has been wiped out, and also, there are still many places in Jiankong to make money any. What did you expect me to do? Calm down, Chen Xing persuaded. Everyone, look at me. No need to quarrel, there will always be money. That's right, Xiang Shu nodded in approval. Chen Xing will stand on the road outside later, the money will come on its own. End chapter. Dinghai Fusheng Records. Chapter 52. Bank. It has nothing to do with you. Chen Xing said. Don't cause trouble. Xian had just wanted to invite Feng Yunjun out for tea, yet Feng Yunjun insisted on getting his 700,000 liang of silver back no matter what. And the reason for that was this: Xifeng and Dongji were the two largest banks in the world. In the year prior, because Feng Yunyi had been possessed and caused Chang'an so much trouble, Xifeng's warehouse had been confiscated by Fujian. Millions of liang of silver lined the state treasury of Great Qin, and both the civil and martial officials started counting their riches merrily. After Fujian obtained this huge sum of money, he then had sufficient military funds and thus started to stir. On the other hand, the Feng family was seriously hurt by this. They returned to Yangtze River, ready to take stock of whatever they had left and start up their business again. As a result, Feng Yunjun came to know that Xian had borrowed 700,000 liang of silver from Xifeng a year ago to support his Baifu forces. The Baifu forces was established for the purpose of resisting Fujian's Qin army, and they were governed by Xian. However, the state treasury of Great Jin had been in deficit for many years, and they dared not raise taxes for fear of an uprising by the intelligentsia. Thus, Sima Yao told Xian honestly that he couldn't afford to support the forces and asked for a disarmament. But how could the disarmament happen? After mulling over it, Xian resorted to borrowing 700,000 with interest from Xifeng Bank's Feng Yunyi, who the Xia family was on good terms with. They established an ICU with terms stating that the money would be returned in a year with an additional 100,000 taels as interest. In any case, most of the Feng family's operations in Chang'an relied on the support of Yangtze River. At the end of the day, he wouldn't be the one who would have to return it anyway. If their debtors really came to confront him, he could just pressure them by attributing it to the national cause. They were all respectable people, so it wasn't like the Feng family could send people over to cause a fuss and roll about outside Wei Lane every day. However, Xian didn't expect Feng Yunyi to embark on the wrong path and die just like that. As soon as the Feng Yunyi's business in Chang'an collapsed, they had wanted to return to Yangtze River to establish a solid footing again. Eyeing them covetously from the side was Dongji Bank, who was on good terms with the Wang family. It was truly a matter of life or death for them then. To make things worse, in the past half a year, Feng Yunyi had lent out a ton of money with no interest accrued to provide relief aid for the common people. Now, the total savings of Xifeng Bank across the country didn't even amount to 100,000 taels. In order to sustain the family business, Feng Yunjun must get this sum of money back. With such an enormous information network, thousands of clansmen, merchants, and armed escorts scattered everywhere all waiting for subsistence, what else could he do? Let's drink some tea first, tea's good, you must be thirsty. I'm not thirsty, Lord Xiat, I want money, Feng Yunjun explained patiently. Little Shidi, help me pacify young Master Feng first please. Feng Yunjun, Lord Xiat, let's just decide on a date for me to get my people to come over and move stuff ba. Chen Xing, Feng Dage, words will do, calm down. Xian, Shidi, do you have any magical artifact with you? Can you offer it to young Master Feng as collateral for now, please? I don't have any. Chen Xing said, Xia Shixing, I'm pleading on your behalf here, yet you have ideas about using my magical artifacts. What would I need magical artifacts for? Feng Yunjun said, can't I just borrow it from Chen Xing myself? The two of us are even more familiar with each other than you. Cut the crap, Lord Xiat, you must return the money this time. Ah! Little Shidi, do you know how to perform the legendary turning stones into gold? I don't. Chen Xing turned frantic. There's no such magic. I'll go get it right now, Xian said at once. Please give me a moment, take a seat. I, Anqi, am true to my words. Feng Yunjun had already drunk a belly full of tea at the Xie residence today. Upon hearing this, he stood outside the hall and said, okay, I'll wait for you. Xian's mansion, in addition to the collection of calligraphy and paintings it held, should be worth quite a sum, but 700,000 taels of silver did still seem a little too much for it. Xian didn't live with the other members of the Xie family either, so he didn't know if this as collateral would be enough. Feng Yunjun turned around. Where's Xiang Shu? While listening to the two of them argue, Xiang Shu felt irascible and had thus left. Chen Xing scrutinized Feng Yunjun and suddenly laughed. Feng Dage, after so much time has passed, you seem to have changed a little. Feng Yunjun was a little surprised. He inspected himself and said, what changed? After watching Feng Yunjun for so long, Chen Xing has always had a nagging sensation that he had changed somehow, yet he couldn't put it into words. It was as if he possessed a faint sense of wickedness, and that he had turned a little devious. Was it because he used the Sen Luo saber that had been refined with resentment? Have you used the Sen Luo saber ever since then? Chen Xing asked. Twice, Feng Yunjun said. When I was trying to leave Murong Chong's scouts in the dust, near the cemetery. But rest assured, I didn't kill anyone. After pondering for a moment, Chen Xing said, this is a little presumptuous, but may I examine you for a bit? Feng Yunjun opened up both his arms, motioning for Chen Xing to do as he pleased. Chen Xing lit up the heart lamp and approached Feng Yunjun. You don't need to take your clothes off, fasten your belt. Chen Xing pressed against Feng Yunjun's chest with one hand. Feng Yunjun was in the middle of undressing, and upon hearing that, stopped. Chen Xing inserted the heart lamp's power into his meridians. He realized that there was still a light of the same source shining in his heart, which had helped safeguard his heart, so there shouldn't be much of an issue. However, the flow of the heart lamp's magic was more sluggish now, as if there was another force in Feng Yunjun's body resisting the heart lamp. There's no major issue, Chen Xing said. But try not to use it too often. Resentment isn't like spiritual qi, your body will be harmed if you use it too frequently. It would gradually turn people more and more evil. Right at that moment, Xiang Shu returned again, as if he had gone back to his room to take something just now. He stood outside, looking at Chen Xing and Feng Yunjun. Chen Xing. Feng Yunjun immediately fastened his belt and put on his robe. Xiang Shu scrutinized the two of them, and Chen Xing said, I was just checking the resentment in his body. Xiang Shu said, I didn't say anything. Xian ran off, are you too sure you still want to wait here for him? What? Feng Yunjun's blood ran cold. Xiang Shu casually pointed in the direction of the palace. Feng Yunjun immediately walked out, only to see that Xian had gone to the palace to hide from his debtor, and now Feng Yunjun was at his wit's end. Chen Xing comforted him, perhaps he's gone there to ask His Majesty for money. Feng Yunjun held his forehead with one hand, saying helplessly, that damn emperor can't even feed himself anymore. He's so anxious that all his hair has fallen out, and now you're saying he'll pay me back? Maybe when the sun rises from the west. Feng Dage, Chen Xing sent Feng Yunjun out of the Xie residence. I'd advise you to not be so aggressive in trying to get your money, otherwise if that ruler-minister duo gets driven into a corner. I myself am about to be driven into a corner, Feng Yunjun cut in. Getting the money we had loaned out is one thing, if this goes on, it will only take 3 months before Xifeng shuts down. No, this won't do, Chen Xing, think of something for me. AI. Chen Xing said immediately, why is it all on me now? I was just seeing you off on Xie Shixing's behalf. Just a moment before, the three had been immersed merrily in old times, but now Feng Qianjun fell out with them over money. Deadpan, he said, if Xifeng Bank folds, no one would watch the Imperial Mausoleum for you guys anymore, and you won't be able to obtain information on the north either. You and Brother Xiang would then have to stake out the site every day outside the Imperial Mausoleum. Wouldn't that be too much trouble? Chen Xing replied, but I don't have money either. The two of us are lodging under another's roof right now. If I had 700,000 taels of silver, would I need to seek shelter at Xian's place? Also, I still owe Xian 3,000 taels. If it wasn't because he had provided for my Shifu and I in the past, why would I acknowledge this Shixing? Brother Xiang. After seeing his previous plan fall through, Feng Qianjun turned to Xiang Shu and said seriously, this little brother here remembers you, weren't you once the great Chanyu, ruler of 10,000 miles of fertile soil? An expressionless Chen Xing said, Feng Dage, just look at Xiang Shu. Does he look rich to you? I've visited his home before. Even if you were to take all his belongings out from that tent to sell, it still wouldn't be enough to return the 3,000 taels of silver I owe Xian. Upon hearing that, Xiang Shu cooperated by patting his body, then spread out both empty palms to show how powerless he was to help even if he wanted to. Go stand by the road for a while. Xiang Shu said, maybe Tuoba Yan would come again. Chen Xing thought, are you still on that? Feng Qianjun didn't know what that meant, so he stared at Chen Xing with a face full of doubt. Chen Xing made up his mind before saying, okay, I'll try something. I uppiter, can you give me some money? So the three of them stood by the road. Xiang Shu angled his head down a little to look at Chen Xing, but didn't speak. A few swallows flew by Wei Lane. It was serene. There aren't many people here, Xiang Shu said. Let's walk out. Chen Xing. Chen Xing walked a few steps to the main road outside Wei Lane. Jiangkang's East Street was bustling with people. With a market full of people, it was exceptionally lively. Will money just fall from the sky? Feng Qianjun felt puzzled. Do we have to find a place with fewer people? Otherwise it'll be robbed from us, ba. Keep walking. Xiang Shu motioned for Chen Xing to continue moving forward a little. Chen Xing, what are you doing this time? Chen Xing took a few more steps, only to see a 3-story, resplendent store to the east of the market. White jade hung on the door, with the words Dongji United. They had actually walked over to where Feng Qianjun's archenemy was. Isn't this your rival? What about your family's bank? Where is it? Chen Xing asked. Feng Qianjun pointed to the west of the market. There was a huge bank there as well with ebony pillars, it was Xifeng United. Never mind, Feng Qianjun said. Come to my house for dinner ba, let's drink in the evening, and I'll introduce your sis-in-law to you guys. Yet Xiang Shu looked up to scrutinize Dongji Bank's plaque, seeming like he was deep in thought. Don't tell me you're going to rob a bank again ba, Chen Xing said. You owe Xian 3,000 taels, Xian said. If you ask, I'll return it for you, but you must promise me one thing. Chen Xing originally wanted to say, this isn't like my city. If you were to really rob a bank, you'd definitely get arrested. Yet he suddenly recalled that on the day Xiang Shu asked him to save Che Lufeng, that was what they had agreed upon as well, so he said, sure, I don't mind. But aside from helping me repay Xian, you have to help Feng Dage tide over his troubles too. AI. Feng Qianjun smiled when he heard this. He had wanted the two to not bicker anymore, but suddenly changed his mind and switched to egging tactics. Brother Chen, I appreciate the thought, but you don't need to force him to do what he can't. As expected, Xiang Shu said with impatience, okay, fine. Nyo, then go ahead, but you can't rob the bank. Chen Xing said a bit reluctantly while having his mind set on watching Xiang Shu make a fool of himself. I'd like to see how you're gonna get the money, it's absolutely impossible. Otherwise why would you have to rob a bank in my city? Also, do you think Feng Qianjun lacks 3,000 taels? He needs 700,000. Even if you're going to rob it, you won't be able to rob that much, you know. However, Xiang Shu had already stepped into the bank. At that time, Dongji's main business, like Feng, was in saving money and usury. In the past half a year, the Yangtze River had been affected by a plague, and every family had someone sick. The result of a labor force at the prime of their life falling sick was the inability to till the lands, yet they still had to fork out money to see a doctor. As such, they had to put aside whatever work they had and borrow money to tide over that difficult period. Feng Bank had the best reputation, so in less than half a year, all their money was loaned out. On the other hand, Dongji was rather patient. They waited for the Feng family to run out of resources before they started lending money, raising interest by 1% per year. Cries of the common people filled the streets, but in order to survive, they had to borrow from them. Chen Xing saw the long queue outside the door, and only then did he realize that the plague was much worse than what Feng Qianjun had described and couldn't help but worry. Xiang Shu glanced at the snaking queue and stood in the hall. Those who are in need of a loan, line up there, the supervisor behind the counter said. Xiang Shu leaned sideways against the counter, knocking on it with his finger. Making a withdrawal, ask your manager to come out. Take out your loan contract, the supervisor said. The manager's busy. Before he finished speaking, Xiang Shu had already grabbed the supervisor's collar and lifted him out from behind the counter. The supervisor panicked in an instant, his face flushing red. After seeing this beautiful man turn violent all of a sudden, the other people got a shock and started clamoring as they retreated quickly. Chen Xing saw that the situation didn't seem good and quickly went forward to stop him, but Xiang Shu placed the supervisor down gently and dusted his sleeves for him. He then repeated slowly, making a withdrawal, ask your manager to come out. The supervisor was both furious and embarrassed, but he knew someone he couldn't offend had come, so he sped to the second floor. Chen Xing took a deep breath and stared at Xiang Shu, yet Xiang Shu just seemed as if he was merely a bystander. Not long after, an escort walked down into the hall quickly from upstairs. He glanced at Feng Qianjun, who was behind Chen Xing and Xiang Shu, and instantly looked as if he understood something. Young Master Feng from Feng Bank, which wind blew you here today? Feng Qianjun sneered. Here to take a look with my friends, it has nothing to do with me. The escort snickered. The manager invites you in. On the third floor of Dongji Bank, a group of martial artists surrounded the manager, ready to stand their ground against the Feng family who had supposedly come to storm them down. Chen Xing nudged Xiang Shu, saying, "Ai, protector, it's enough, don't cause a fuss anymore. I was just kidding. Let's leave ba." Xiang Shu glanced at Chen Xing, then his gaze shifted to the manager, only to see three people sitting before a table in the hall. The manager thought that Feng Qianjun was just seeking a gap under some pretext, yet he saw the young master of the Feng family and this young man sitting leisurely on opposite sides, with a young scholar in the middle. Hence, he regarded him as the one in charge and asked, "Little brother, may I ask, how much money have you saved in our bank?" Chen Xing glanced at Xiang Shu, thinking, in which universe do I have money? It has nothing to do with them. Xiang Shu didn't drink the tea Dongji offered and just said casually, "Manager, you're a Han, what's your surname?" The manager looked Xiang Shu up and down in doubt, answering, "Wang." Xiang Shu nodded. "A year ago, I clarified my identity in your esteemed bank in my city, wanting to withdraw some money for travel expenses with my fingerprint as proof. Your esteemed bank told me, during times of war, Dongji United only allows deposits and no withdrawals, and that even the emperor couldn't think about withdrawing money at your bank. Is that true? Chen Xing immediately recalled the robbery that occurred in my city not long after his first meeting with Xiang Shu. So he had wanted to withdraw money then? He had money saved up in Dongji? How much did he have saved? Feng Qianjun recalled it too. Both of them turned their heads, staring at Xiang Shu with complex expressions. Manager Wang didn't know how to answer him for a moment. He could neither nod or shake his head, because a bank not allowing their customers to withdraw money was a really serious issue, and using calamities as an excuse was even worse. Moreover, in a turbulent world, there were many who needed money urgently. By ignoring those in need of help, wouldn't that be equivalent to ruining their reputation? There's absolutely nothing of the sort. Manager Wang could only lie with his eyes open, denying it vehemently, nothing of the sort. Our bank has never had that rule. The My City branch must have taken matters into their own hands. If we had offended you in any way, this humble one would like to apologize. Please pardon us. In this way, those present had even more reason to think that Feng Qianjun was there to cause trouble. But one should always deploy diplomacy before resorting to violence. Only after ensuring their dignity was intact would it then be easier for them to deal with other problems. Dear customer, as long as you present your loan contract, an escort behind the manager took the initiative to say, no matter what corner of the world you walk to, as long as you're at a Dongji bank and request it, we would definitely let you withdraw your money. While wealth is covetable for a gentleman, he makes it through ethical means. Dongji has been open for hundreds of years, and no matter what, reason stands above all. Feng Qianjun sneered. The manager treated him as if he didn't see that. He motioned to Chen Xing, evidently regarding Chen Xing as the young master amongst them three, meaning how much money would you like to withdraw? Yet Xiang Shu said, since you've said that, I just have one question to ask. Does your esteemed bank remember the Sholu family? My name is Sholu Kong. Oh, the manager said. So you're a Tile Na, Sholu family, Sholu Kong, Sholu Kong. All of a sudden, the manager realized something was wrong. Didn't the name Sholu Kong belong to the great Chanyu of the ancient Cle covenant? But Xiang Shu doesn't look like a Hu in the slightest. In the Han people's hearts, their impression of the so-called great Chanyas were limited to middle-aged boors like Hu Hanyi and Fu Jian over the age of 40. How could such a person have come? It didn't match. Before my father passed away, I remember he saved a sum of money in Dongji Bank, Xiang Shu recounted indifferently. It should have been about 30 years since then. Does Dongji Bank still have the loan contract for that? The manager was taken aback, then said, where was it saved? Yuzhu, Zhuojun. Xiang Shu answered, at that time, Dongji opened up a branch at Zhuojun. In order to do business, they befriended the Hu beyond the Great Wall. They came to find my father, Sholu Wen, and proposed to safekeep a sum of money for the Sholu family and even promised to lend money out to merchants on his behalf. Both sides kept their respective loan contracts. After the Murong clan of Xianbei had Yuzhu under control, I recall that Dongji seemed to have been doing quite well in Zhuojun. The manager's expression turned solemn. If it was a deposit, all the contracts written by Dongji Bank would have been sent to the main headquarters, and all the other branches would have a stone-rubbed version for future reference. I'll go get someone to look for it right now. How much did your father save? Chen Xing asked Xiang Shu, thinking that he might actually have 3,000 taels, or more. I don't know, Xiang Shu said simply. We didn't count. Feng Qianjun thought that this was a little interesting now too. Spectators were never worried about how major a commotion could be. With a gloating look on his face, his gaze was affixed on the manager, waiting to see how he was going to resolve the problem this time. The manager glanced at the supervisor, who was beside him, then that person quickly went downstairs. We seem to have it, the manager said. When I was a child, I heard the old manager mention it. In fact, I have to express my utmost gratitude to the old Great Chanya for his support, but I was just wondering why the Great Chanya would come all the way to Yangtze River to retrieve your money." While he spoke, someone had already come forward and cleared their tea, then changed Ito roasted tea similar to what was offered in Xian's residence with some snacks at the side. Xiang Shu didn't answer his question directly and instead said, "Why are you asking so many questions? Can you find the contract, or not? But it's okay even if you can't find it." Chen Xing thought that Xiang Shu wanted to say "but it's okay even if you can't find it, I'll leave then," thinking that he had just said all that to scare him. But unexpectedly, Xiang Shu took out 2 sheepskin rolls from his robes, saying, "If you can't find it, why don't you look at my loan contract?" Those were the sheepskin rolls he had seen on the ship that Xiang Shu had kept in a box. Feng Yunjun was startled dumb as well. The Shola family actually kept something from 30 years ago? And even carried it around with them? This is a loan contract. Chen Xing uttered in disbelief. He reached out, wanting to take a look, and Xiang Shu didn't stop him. The manager stretched out his neck to glance at the table. Chen Xing had just untied the rope binding it when someone from below hurried upstairs, holding a box identical to the one Xiang Shu was carrying. Someone on the side then opened the box, revealing the same 2 sheepskin rolls inside. The manager glanced at Xiang Shu, feeling perplexed, then looked down at his sheepskin rolls. "Xiang Shu, one loan contract was written 30 years ago, the deposit contract from the agreement between Dongji and my father. The other was written 8 years ago. My father was gravely ill then and knew he didn't have much time left, so he called the manager of Yuzhu to Chi Le Chuan and transferred this part of the Shola family assets to me. The fingerprints of both parties can be seen on them." Chen Xing had just unfurled the sheepskin rolls when he saw the row of fingerprints at the bottom. Right after the manager saw the first part of the contract, he rolled the sheepskin back up and ate it. "AI! What are you doing? Guards! Your manager has gone crazy!" Feng Yunjun started shouting at once, and everyone at the sides turned pale with fright as they came forward one after another. With a baffled expression, Chen Xing looked up, still not knowing what had happened until he saw the manager's pained expression before he forcefully tried to swallow the sheepskin rolls. Chen Xing quickly said, "That's not paper. You'll choke to death." The scene descended into chaos. Xiang Shu stepped forward and grabbed the manager's chin. Feng Yunjun made an all-out effort to dig that sheepskin roll out. The escorts were about to snatch it, but how could they be Xiang Shu's opponent? Instead, they littered the ground in an instant. The manager took a long while before recovering, and he kept gasping as he stared at the ceiling. Then, he turned around to open the window. Feng Yunjun was the first to react and shouted, "Don't let him jump! Quick!" An hour later, the discussion was moved to the second floor of Dongji Bank. "Madam!" Dongji Bank suspended their operations temporarily, and the one in charge was finally here. A bunch of guards protected a young madam as they went to the second floor. Before the young madam arrived, a fragrance came first. The sweet-smelling scent concocted with hundreds of flowers instantly plunged the interior of the bank into spring. The manager was twitching in the corner at the moment. The young madam glanced at him, then said, "Take him down and calm him, he'll be fine after he drinks some medicine. Let me introduce myself, Great Chanyu, my surname is Wen." "Madam Wen," Feng Yunjun said with a smile. "It's been a really long time na." The young madam surnamed Wen was the one in charge of Dongji Bank, called Wen Zhe. Dongji Bank was founded by her ancestors. With a little makeup on, Wen Zhe was dressed in red brocade robes, looking like a newlywed bride. She was calm, and her scent assaulted the nostrils of those around her. She glanced at Feng Yunjun, saying, "I've heard of the incident in Chang'an regarding the main manager Feng, my condolences. Don't let your body suffer." Feng Yunjun nodded. Dongji and Xifeng banks had always been sworn enemies who could never live under the same sky. Yet once the respective leaders met face to face, they were surprisingly polite with each other. In this world, people only fight and kill one another over profit for the sake of their livelihoods, after all. May I take a look at young Master Sholu's loan contract? Wen Zhe asked politely. Xiang Shu placed the loan contract on the tray, and someone passed it to Wen Zhe. The 4 copies were placed side by side, their authenticity verified. Wen Zhe said gently, Dongji Bank has never offered interest on deposits, but 30 years ago, in order to obtain a footing in Yuzhu, we had an agreement with the old great Chanyu. Our bank took care of the Sholu family's funds, essentially managing their assets for them. It was both a deposit, and loans to the Murong clan, the Tuiba clan, Zhang Mao and others, and, whenever Dongji loans the royal family money, we have always charged 1% interest while the Sholu family would enjoy 0.5% as profit. How much is there? Chen Xing handed the sheepskin roll over before he could read it in detail. End chapter.